Hi, my name is Alyssa Handy, and I am a graduate student at Morningside University. I am going into my 10th year of teaching. I started my teaching career with kindergarten for the first 2 years, and then I've taught third grade for the last 7 years. The title to my study is called Number Sense Routines to Improve Mathematics. The problem for my study started with that only 41% of fourth grade students performed at or above proficiency level in mathematics in 2019 on the National Assessment of Educational Progress. This level of achievement has not changed significantly since 2017. And according to Trends in International Mathematics and Science Study, mathematical scores in the United States have not made many improvements nor decreases. In fact, America had ranked 31st in mathematics out of the 79 countries who participated in that study. The reason that I chose to use mathematics and number sense for my study is that I have witnessed my own students struggling with mathematics ever since I started teaching third grade. And in fact, it wasn't just those lower students that were struggling with mathematics. It was several students, even students who were very high in reading. Another reason was that our district, Southeast Polk, has begun discussing and implementing various mathematics interventions such as a number sense routine. So I wanted to kind of get ahead of that game and see what I could find out on my own and maybe bring that to my district as well. Some things that I found along with my study is that there are impacts that low mathematics can have on students both in education and outside once they graduate. Some of that is their daily life alterations. That includes, different daily life skills or different mathematical uses that are used at jobs. Another impact that it could have is a halt in mathematics progression throughout the student's education. This is normally due to moving from those concrete concepts to the more abstract thinking, more abstract concepts in math that occur after the elementary years. Another impact is that students can become disconnected with mathematics, causing them to not graduate high school or even be accepted into college, which could in turn ultimately influence employment opportunities. Another piece of literature that I found was that the number sense and fact automaticity had such foundational skills in mathematical learning. Understanding numbers and fact automaticity are the building blocks of mathematical reasoning. Students lose these abilities to apply cognitive processes to solve complex problems. And memorizing facts is also problematic for students who struggle with focus and attention towards learning new concepts. Some past interventions that I'd come across was technology and game-based learning approaches. One of them was an intervention that was called Times Attacked by Imagine Math Facts, and this was a computer-assisted intervention that provided extra fact practice opportunities. The students that participated in this program made overall improvements on their multiplication fact fluency. This was proven through various fact fluency assessment data. Another intervention that was put into place from Here to There learning tool introduced different algebraic concepts. This tool was adaptive to student progression. It helped students understand different numbers using tangible objects to gain a better and more concrete understanding of algebraic numbers. In this study, there was a gamified and a non-gamified version, and the study concluded that the students in the gamified version actually progressed 6 times higher than the students in the non-gamified version. Which leads me into this next part about student engagement. Students are using various technology programs to take in new information through their senses and encode that information. This goes along with the information processing theory that helps students learn new information. Multimedia tools are a great source to help reinforce mathematical concepts. However, it is founded that these tools cannot replace all teaching methods. There were some potential problems along the studies that I had come across. Some teachers did feel that the extra time that was spent using these different game-based or technology programs did take away from the teacher instruction time, so cutting out some of that one-on-one instruction time. These interventions also proved to be more beneficial for those lower achieving mathematical students. So it didn't necessarily benefit all students, but more just towards the ones that were struggling with math. That also leads me to some of the gap in the literature. The past interventions that I had found really focused on a single area, or such as like fact automaticity or algebraic concepts. There wasn't a lot where all of these things were put together and used on a daily basis, which is what I wanted to do for my study. So the purpose of my study was to integrate the effectiveness of a number sense routine into a daily math lessons to improve overall mathematical scores and fact fluency scores among third grade students in America. There was a variety of teaching methods and tools that were used to teach those foundational number sense skills. Student data was measured using mathematical standards assessment along with a multiplication and division fact fluency assessment. The hypothesis for the study was that the third grade students who received a daily number sense routine intervention, including mental and concrete experiences, along with targeted mental or mathematical vocabulary instruction, will show more growth in mathematical standard scores as well as fact fluency scores. The impacts of this study is very beneficial both to teachers, administration, and students. Teachers can benefit from this study by learning the importance of using these various learning tools and the significance of the number sense and what that plays on mathematical understanding. Administration can use this by helping lead their districts and creating a number sense routine for teachers to use in every classroom so that all students are receiving the same number sense routine. This study was a quantitative single-subject A-B design research to determine the impact of a daily number sense intervention on mathematics proficiency. The independent variable was the targeted number sense routines that included mathematical vocabulary that occurred on a daily basis. The independent variables was the Common Core Progress Monitoring Assessment, as well as the multiplication and division fact fluency assessments. The participants for this study included the researchers' the 18 students within her class. You can see that there is a range of students between 8 and 9 years old. There were 10 males and 8 females that participated. There was also a variety of ethnicity and socioeconomic status. 2 students received special education services through an IEP, while 1 service received enrichment opportunities through the Talented and Gifted program. The materials that were used in this study was the Number Talks, being the number sense intervention that was used on a daily basis, about 10 to 15 minutes prior to the start of the core math time. Base 10 blocks were used as tangible objects. Whiteboards and dry erase markers were used. Mathematics writing journals. Every student had their own writing journal where they could solve their problems in their journal, work problems out with partners, explain their thinking in as well. And then there was mathematics vocabulary that was heavily used throughout the routine. The assessment part of the materials was the Common Core Monitoring Assessment, and this was an assessment given in a paper pencil format that had 30 questions that were all based off third grade mathematical standards. And you can see here on the screen the various mathematical standards that were used in this assessment. There was also a multiplication and division fact fluency assessment. Each assessment contained 40 facts, either multiplication or division, and the students were given 2.5 minutes to complete their assessment. The procedure for this study started with all of the students participating and taking the Common Core Monitoring Assessment, as well as both the multiplication and division assessments. And this was done at the beginning of the baseline phase, also known as the pretest. The baseline phase consisted of 3 weeks where the students received no intervention. They just had their regular core mathematics time. At the end of that 3-week baseline phase, the students were given again the Common Core monitoring assessment as well as the multiplication and division assessments at the end of this baseline phase. And so this was considered the midpoint assessments. After that midpoint assessment, the students then began the 3-week treatment phase. During this treatment phase, the intervention that was integrated was called Number Talks, and that was a combination of mental number sense lessons, mental computation, there was concrete learning experiences, mathematics vocabulary, and other various tools were used during the Number Talk routine. The students were given the Common Core monitoring assessment again, and the multiplication and division fact fluency assessments at the end of the treatment phase, being their post-tests. The data was then analyzed from both the Common Core monitoring assessment as well as the multiplication and division fact fluency assessments. They were recorded and then put into the software Jamovi to determine the results of a paired samples t-test. The results of this study from the pretest to the midpoint assessment, so that period, that baseline period where they had received no number sense intervention, determined that there was not a statistically significant difference. And that was true for both the Common Core monitoring assessment as well as the multiplication and division fact fluency assessments. From the midpoint assessment to the post-test data, so the point of where the students did receive that treatment phase, the number sense routine, it did determine that there was statistically significant differences. And that was true for all 3 assessments, the Common Core monitoring assessment, the multiplication, and the division fact fluency assessments. Here you can see the graphs showing the mean scores for the Common Core monitoring assessment from the pretest, midpoint, and post-test. Then here we have the multiplication fact fluency assessment mean scores from the pretest, the midpoint assessment, and the post-test. And then lastly, the division fact fluency assessment mean scores. Again, the pretest, mid-test, and post-test. Here's a breakdown from the pretest to the midpoint assessment data. For the Common Core progress monitoring assessment, the mean scores for the pretest was 17.3, where the midpoint was 18.8. Multiplication, we had pretest at 31.8 and midpoint assessment at 32.2. And then for the division fact fluency, the pretest had a mean score of 28.5 and the midpoint assessment of 29.1. So there kind of shows how there was not a statistically significant difference. However, from that midpoint assessment to the post-test data, you can see where there is a statistically significant difference. The Common Core monitoring assessment, students had an 18.8 mean score for the midpoint to a 21.4 on the post-test. And for the multiplication, the mean was 32.2 and the post-test 34.9 for mean score. And then for the division fact fluency assessment, students scored at the 29.1 for the midpoint and then 32.8 for the post-test. So overall, with that in mind, the results of this study confirmed that students who received a daily number sense routine intervention show more growth in mathematical standard scores as well as fact fluency scores. Since there was no statistically significant growth during the baseline phase in which students first took the pretest and finished with the midpoint assessment for the 3rd grade Common Core monitoring assessment, as well as the multiplication and division fact fluency assessments, but determined to have statistically significant results from the midpoint assessment to the post-test. Integrating a number sense routine suggests to be beneficial for 3rd grade students' mathematical understanding.